Every family who came to look at them left with the same answer: we can only take one. They were kittens, barely 8 weeks old. One a small orange tabby, the other black and white, with a face split down the middle like a smudged ink drawing. They'd arrived separately, weeks apart, from 2 different situations. The orange kitten, later named Buddy, had been found alone in a parking lot, no mother in sight, small enough to fit in a single cupped hand. The black and white kitten, later named Domino, had come from a hoarding situation, one of 11 cats pulled from a single overcrowded apartment. They'd been placed in adjoining kennels simply because the shelter had run out of other space that week. Nobody expected anything to come of it. Within 3 days, staff noticed something. The 2 kittens pressed themselves against the shared wire wall between their kennels whenever they could, sleeping in matching curled positions on either side of the barrier. When a volunteer finally moved them into a single enclosure, Buddy and Domino spent the first hour simply sitting pressed against each other, as though they'd been separated far longer than 3 days. From that point on, the shelter stopped showing them individually. Every potential adopter who expressed interest in one kitten was gently redirected toward the reality of the situation. They come as a pair now. He doesn't do well without her, or she doesn't do well without him, depending on which one someone had asked about first. It wasn't entirely clear which kitten had attached to which. What was clear was that separating them, even for a routine vet check, produced a level of distress in both of them that the staff had rarely seen in kittens that young. This made them a harder adoption, not an easier one. Most families interested in a kitten wanted one, not the commitment and expense of 2. Buddy and Domino sat in the shelter for 4 months, while single kittens around them found homes within days. Margaret Alvarez was 73 when she first saw their photo on the shelter's website. She'd lost her husband Raymond 18 months earlier, a heart condition that had given some warning, but not nearly enough, and had spent the time since adjusting to a house that had gone from occupied to echoing almost overnight. Her children lived out of state, calling regularly, but unable to fill the specific daily silence that had settled into rooms Raymond used to move through. Margaret hadn't been looking for 2 kittens. She'd been looking, cautiously, for one calm, older cat, something low maintenance for a woman her age living alone. The shelter's website had shown her Buddy and Domino's listing anyway, the description explaining that they came as a bonded pair and could not be separated under any circumstances the staff had yet discovered. Something about the photo stopped her scrolling. The 2 kittens curled together, indistinguishable at a glance from a single orange and black shape, except for the small pink nose visible where their faces met. She called the shelter the next morning, before she'd fully decided anything, and asked what bonded pair meant in practice. The volunteer explained honestly. They panic when separated, genuinely panic, not just fuss. We've tried twice for medical reasons, and both times it took hours to calm them back down once reunited. Margaret thought about Raymond's chair, still angled toward the window the way he'd left it, and the quality of a house with exactly one person's noise in it. She drove to the shelter that afternoon. I have to pause the story here for a moment. If Buddy and Domino's refusal to be separated already means something to you, hitting subscribe genuinely helps stories like this one find the people who need them. The first months at Margaret's house were, by her own account, chaotic in a way her quiet life hadn't prepared her for. 2 kittens meant double the energy and mess, furniture climbed and occasionally destroyed, a level of noise that filled the house in a way Margaret found she'd genuinely missed without realizing it. Buddy and Domino explored every room together, always within a few feet of each other, developing a rhythm that seemed less like 2 separate animals and more like a single unit operating on shared instinct. They slept curled together every night on the foot of Margaret's bed, and Margaret found herself narrating her days out loud to both of them, the way she used to talk to Raymond, though now the conversation went in 2 directions at once, one kitten's ear flicking toward her voice, while the other kept its focus elsewhere. Her daughter, Claire, visiting for the first time since the adoption, watched the 2 kittens tumble across the living room floor and said something that stuck with Margaret afterward. It's like watching 2 halves of the same thought. As the kittens grew into cats over the following year, the bond between them didn't loosen the way some assumed it might. If anything, it sharpened into something more deliberate. Domino, who had grown into the larger, steadier of the two, developed a habit of positioning herself between Buddy and anything unfamiliar: a repairman, a loud vacuum, a storm rattling the windows. Buddy, in turn, seemed to calm the moment Domino settled beside him, his energy dropping from anxious to relaxed within seconds. Margaret watched this pattern repeat for months before she understood what she was looking at. It wasn't simply affection, it was function. Domino had appointed herself the steady one, and Buddy had built his sense of safety around her presence. The night that revealed how far that function extended came in late winter, nearly 2 years after the adoption. Margaret had gone to bed with what she assumed was a mild stomach upset, nothing worth mentioning to Claire on their weekly call, and woke sometime after 1 in the morning to a sharp, spreading pain that made it difficult to draw a full breath. Domino was on the bed instantly, standing over Margaret with an intensity that broke from her usual calm entirely, while Buddy, uncharacteristically, didn't retreat the way he usually did during anything stressful. Instead, he stayed pressed against Margaret's other side, both cats positioned as though they'd silently divided the task, one sounding the alarm, the other refusing to let her feel alone in it. Domino's cry was sharp and continuous, nothing like her usual quiet chirp, loud enough that it carried through the thin bedroom wall to Margaret's neighbor, who called out and then called for help when the sound didn't stop. The paramedics later confirmed a gallbladder complication serious enough that a delay of even a few more hours might have led to a considerably more dangerous outcome. Margaret, recovering in the hospital days later, tried to explain to Claire that both cats had somehow known before she understood it herself, one raising the alarm while the other simply stayed close enough that she never felt alone in it. She came home 5 days later to find Buddy and Domino curled together at the foot of the bed, waiting, exactly as they'd waited through every separation the shelter had ever tested them with. The families who'd passed on adopting them saw an inconvenience, 2 kittens instead of 1, extra cost and chaos, but what none of them had accounted for was a woman who understood exactly what it meant to lose the comfort of not being alone, and 2 kittens who had already learned that some things are worth refusing to let go of. Margaret says now that she thinks Raymond would have liked watching them work as a team the way they do. She likes to think some evenings that he sent them both on purpose, knowing one alone was never going to be enough to fill the house the way it needed filling. Would you have taken both, or would you have looked for the easier, simpler option like everyone else did for 4 months? Tell me in the comments. If Buddy and Domino's story stayed with you, there's another one waiting that will stay with you longer. Her name was Salem, a restless Bengal who tore through every room in the house for 3 months straight until her frantic energy revealed something about her owner Elena that nobody else had noticed. What that restlessness caught one October night is coming up next.